Okay, the board has resumed from closed session. However, we would like to, the board went into closed session on a motion to enter closed session to discuss personnel issues, student discipline, collective bargaining, the superintendent's evaluation, and to review closed session minutes. We are now going to have the call to order again, and so this is September 24th, 2019, the regular meeting of CUSD 201 Board of Education, and if we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mrs. Coyle.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Mr. Rudy.
Here.
Mrs. Strohmeyer. Here. Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the September 10th, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the chair will...
Abstain.
I'm sorry.
Abstain.
The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the first closed session of the September 10th, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Motion carries. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the second closed session of the September 10th, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Abstain.
motion carried. Okay, are there any public comments? Okay, we will go to the public hearing on the 2019-2020 budget.
All right, good evening. I'm pleased to present the fiscal year 20 budget. First, we'll start out and we'll look at our revenues by source. When we look at all funds, our total revenues are $28.4 million. Property taxes comprise $24.2 million, or 85.11% of that. When we look at our operating funds, which are the education fund, the O&M fund, tort, transportation, IMF, and Social Security funds, our property taxes account for 84% of our revenues. Other local sources, those are things like school fees and other things district-wide, 4.73%. When we look at state, 7.72%, and 3% of our revenues come from the federal government. Pictorially, you can see, obviously, property taxes are the greatest component of our revenue, and our revenue increases based on CPI. So unlike a business, we don't have the opportunity to sell goods and make profits by increasing our costs or things like that. We are dictated by what CPI does and by the property tax extension limitation law. Again, we look at all funds, a pictorial representation of our revenues. So our tax levy is based on a CPI of 2.1% for the 2018 levy and 1.9% for the 2019 levy. Our interest income over the last year had increased substantially. Short-term rates, while still low, had gone up significantly. We're starting to see a decline in short-term rates, but I did put an increase in interest income in our budget to reflect earnings from last year and anticipated earnings for this year. Our grant funding is still at our preliminary FY20 levels. We still have several grants that have not had final approval from the state. Evidence-based funding, which was formerly known as general state aid, increased by $1,636. So again, that is not a source of additional revenue for the district. And then our transportation fund revenues continue to be prorated, and that is estimated right now at the FY19 levels because the FY20 allocations have not been released. We looked at our expenditures by object. Salaries, whether we're looking at all funds or the operating funds, salaries and benefits, our people, we're a people business, are comprise over 74% for our operating funds. So again, if we need to control expenses, that's the place where we're going to have to do it because purchase services, supplies, those things are relatively small portions of our budget. You can see salaries and benefits are, over $21 million for our district. So again, when we look at this pictorially, salaries 60.17%, and you can see what a large portion of our operating budget that is. And then again, when we look at all funds, it's still, salaries and benefits are still the major components of our expenditures. The salaries right now are per contract for the WTA. WESPA and WCMA are being negotiated. WESPA did have a built-in 2% increase at the end of the contract year, so that is reflected in this budget. Medical insurance is budgeted at the current rate for the first half of the year and at 5% increase for the remainder of the year. The O&M fund includes funding for capital expenditures and repairs identified in the 5-year capital plan. Those include replacement of the district phone system, lunch tables and masonry work and boiler pipe patching at Manning, some masonry work at South, carpet replacement in 4 rooms at the junior high. We replaced some science lab stations and lockers for ADA compliance at the high school. And then our capital projects fund will utilize any remaining working cash bond funds that we have. And our fire prevention and safety fund includes expenditures for some of the items on the life safety survey, and we'll need additional funding for those. If you look at our fund balance summary, you can see that our fund balances are declining in our operating funds, a $2 million deficit overall. The largest component of that is in the ed fund, which was about $1.6 million. And in the O&M fund, almost $62,000. That is planned deficit spending in there. In that fund, we have sufficient balances to do that, and the board had approved projects for this coming year. So anyway, and then in our deficit restricted funds, $1.49 million, and the majority of that would be any transfers from working cash to the capital project. So we do have that funding available. We're not spending more than we actually have there. Some things the property tax freeze legislation is still kind of out there. There's nothing been determined on that, and pension reform is still always kind of coming up as a topic. So obviously if those two things come into play, we'll need to come back and revisit our budget and our spending. We also, on the evidence-based funding, there are specific components that we have to allocate our revenues based on. So out of that $1.3 million, $387,000 needs to be allocated for low-income students, $26,000 for English learners, $516,000 for special education students, and then there's $395,000 of that is not specifically allocated. We use our evidence-based funding to employ licensed educators, provide professional development. We purchase curriculum and learning tools. We engage in family and community engagement activities. And Some of the other things that we do, we provide instructional services and materials for our English learners. We focus to increase time and attention on specific populations. And we invest in facilities, maintenance, infrastructure, and operations. Some of the things, ISB has certain goals that each district is supposed to look at and make sure they are working to meet those goals. The goals that we currently meet are all kindergartners are assessed for readiness. All students are supported by highly prepared and effective teachers and school leaders. Every school offers a safe and healthy learning environment. 90% or more of our 9th grade students are on track to graduate with their cohort, and 90% or more of students graduate from high school ready for career and college. There are 2 areas that are goals that we are continuing to work on to make progress on. One of them is 90% of 3rd grade students are reading at or above grade level, and 90% or more of 5th grade students meet or exceed expectations in math. So overall considerations for the budget, revenue projections are conservative. Expenditures are based on the anticipated needs and exceed current revenues in the operating funds. Planned deficit spending in the O&M fund. And the 1920 budget is aligned with board and district goals to provide educational services to the students and families we serve. And also one thing, we had several years ago put a fund balance policy in place where if fund balances were below the 45% threshold, that we would start to look at our spending and realign things. So this is the first year that the education fund does not meet that goal. And so the tort fund doesn't, that's okay because we don't want to have large balances in there anyway. But the education fund is one of those that we are going to definitely be working on for this next school year to make sure that we're getting back on track. So we really will need to be looking at our spending going forward.
How far under are we?
Hold on, we are at 40.7%. So we're still fine. We don't have to do a deficit reduction plan according to ISB and things like that. Again, our board, we'd like to be conservative. We want to have money, a reserve for that rainy day, unexpected thing. But this is the first time in my tenure here that we've hit this. And so I want everyone to be aware, and that is something that's going to be communicated with all stakeholders that we need to start working on.
Will you start that with the, with the finance committee or something?
Yes.
Or what process do
Yeah,
you
we'll start
have?
working on that. We'll have some conversations with admin team and kind of look at how we're spending and doing things. And again, when you look at, there's only so many supplies and things like that you can cut. That's not a significant portion of our budget. Where we're spending our money is on our people.
Kim, at what point for the, does the state require, what percentage
It's, I think, around 25%.
for the deficit reduction plan?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, so it's close. I would have to look that up,
Around
but
that.
if you're around 25%, you're okay.
And Marie, to your question, Gary and I and Kim on the finance committee had already started to talk about, I was gonna bring it up if the board would like us to do that, to start as a finance committee, to start looking at our resources and how we can.
Part of the reason I asked that was for the general, now, since this is our budget presentation, so I kind of figured you guys were doing that, but
Yeah.
I just thought that since you alluded to the fact that this is something we have to talk about with everybody, I just figured that to ask that procedural question is if that's how you plan to start that.
Yes.
And then we will hear back from the committee
Yep.
as well as having further discussions. These are never conversations you really want to do, but
No.
we have to watch that, so
Okay.
anyway, thank you
All right. Any
for
other
that,
questions?
Dana.
I have one more question,
Okay.
sorry. Finance committee member has lots of questions. For the evidence-based funding, the 2 goals that we currently do not meet are 90% of our 3rd graders meeting or exceeding reading and 5th graders for math. if we were to meet those goals, it looked like our increase for evidence-based funding was really insignificant. So would,
Yeah.
if we met those goals, would it not be a very big
That's,
increase?
it's the evidence-based funding is based on your resources that you have available as a district. So because we have such a large tax base, we have adequate resources. That's why we only got $1,600 more of tier funding for this year, because the state considers our district more than, we are adequately funded. So they're not allocating additional resources to our district. They're sending that money to other districts.
Dana, the 90% of those goals come from ESSA, which is replace NCLB. And so school districts are held accountable to those goals, but they phase in that percentage. And right now, we're above what's required by the state
Okay.
at this time. I can't remember how many years out, but down the road, the expectation is that we'll be at the 90%.
Yeah, but funding is not based on
That.
meeting that goal.
And we have just made changes in
Right,
math and reading.
right.
So we are addressing.
Right, we're working on it, and that's all that we're,
working on it. So it's
we're
not like
working on and
we just
continuing to
drop-
work
yeah,
on
right.
it. And that's what we need to be doing as a district.
Yes, okay, perfect, thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay, so let me do this officially. The President of the Board of Education calls the public hearing to order regarding the proposed 2019-2020 budget. The President asks if there are additional comments from the members of the Board of Education regarding the proposed budget. So are there any other questions? Okay. The President asks if there are any public comments concerning the proposed 2019-2020 budget. All right, the President then declares that the public hearing on the proposed 2019-2020 budget is closed. I just would like to say, Kim, as I do every year, I do thank you for conservative projections. It does help to be conservative, because then if you get more, you're always happy, and we're not lost. So I just wanted to say that. Okay. The next item is the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. Employment of licensed staff. Jennifer Gilbert, grade 1 teacher, Manning Elementary School, to cover maternity leave. Zach Troyer, vocal choir director, increased in FTE from 0.9 FTE to 1.0 FTE, Westmont Junior High School. Brent Erlob, fine arts choir, increase in FTE from 0.9 FTE to 1.0 FTE, Westmont High School. Employment of support staff. Anisha Garlak, payroll and benefits specialist, district office. Stipend position, Christopher Butts, senior high varsity wrestling coach, Westmont High School. Compensation adjustment, Dan McCullough, athletic director, compensation adjustment. Number 2, disposal of equipment. Number 3, approval of student tour requests. 4, approval of September 2019 expenditure report. And 5, ratification of August 2019 regular payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just have a quick follow-up question. We have the disposal of equipment is of the driver's ed car. Do you know when the new one will be purchased?
They emailed me, they're supposed to bring it tomorrow.
Okay, so, high school students, be ready for that. That'll be,
It's been a long time, right? That was a 2003, if my memory serves,
The
right?
6. but yeah,
2006,
yeah.
well,
okay.
that's really nice. So that's exciting. All right, first item for discussion is student recognition. And we talked about this briefly at the last meeting because Laura Coyle had asked to bring this topic up. And then we asked Kevin Carey to give us just what the district has done in terms of student recognition in the past. So Laura, did you want to
Yeah, sure, I'll kick this off. I mean, I asked for this to be put on the agenda, mostly because in my observation, I feel like it might be time for us to really review our practices and make sure we're aligned with current best practices for student recognition. I would say especially given the increased focus on social emotional learning. I'm not really sure that how we're handling recognition is consistent with the way other districts in the area might be handling it, or even current recommendations in terms of best practices. From my perspective, I've been exposed mostly to the elementary schools, so that's where my concern has been highlighted, and especially just concerned about maybe some unintended consequences of our student recognition practices for our youngest students in the district. Anxiety and depression are on the rise. And I think we as a district need to be really careful about the messages we're sending to our students, and student recognition is part of that. So I just wanted to open the floor to see if anybody else had comments. Kevin, I appreciate the information you shared with us, and I think that's a good snapshot. I think for me, one of the biggest concerns about how we're treating recognition at the elementary level is the number of awards and the focus of the awards. So there's almost half a classroom that's getting awarded each year. And really it's for academic and citizenship, which starting at the kindergarten level to me is kind of troubling. But anyway, I just wanted to open up the conversation and see if there were any other board comments.
Well, Laura and I had talked before when Laura had asked to have this put on the agenda. So I will tell you that the number of years back, and again, I don't remember how, maybe 5, 6 years, it seemed like we were having these January and May board recognitions, and it seemed like there were not that many.
Yeah.
So we had discussed at that time, like, is there some way we could kind of expand that to not just have, number one in the class and that kind of stuff?
Right.
Well, interestingly enough, it seems like it like ballooned from there. So I for one do appreciate you asking for this, because it does seem like there was a pendulum and then it swung, and so I don't know what the full answer is, but I do.
Right.
If we are, and I guess is your concern the board recognition pieces or the ones that the schools do, like at the end of the year?
Honestly, it's all of them in
Okay.
combination. I think just how we're recognizing students in general and how that plays into what our goals are for students in terms of educating the whole child and social emotional learning. I just feel like there's some tension between those two things, and I'd kind of like us to explore that a little bit further.
Yes, I just, as a starting point, it
Yep.
did seem like we went from very little to a lot, and,
Right.
Well, I agree, Mary, that's exactly what happened. We went from very
Yeah.
little to a lot, and as I'm reviewing all this, there doesn't seem to be any consistency,
Right.
okay? Manning's doing this, Miller's doing that, junior high's doing this. Maybe that's more the problem. Maybe we need to focus down a little bit and make it a little bit more consistent. And it would be interesting, you brought up a point, and I know we almost always like to compare ourselves to other, what are other schools doing in this regard? I don't know how the other area schools handle their student recognition. Do they do it? I mean, it's proudly as we do, on TV and with half the classroom, okay? Or, I guess I would say maybe a review of the policy and see if we could find some balance, some consistency across the board.
Laura, can I ask what particular, so when you were talking about the alignment between social emotional learning and anxiety and depression,
Yep.
what particular concerns as far as student recognition goes kind of came to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think my, what I've observed at the elementary level is, especially when you are giving a high number of awards. It's a little bit vague in terms of what a student needs to do to achieve those awards. They're given in a public fashion. And with a high number of awards, almost half the class getting them, it tends to be the same students year after year. So essentially, at least in my observation, by the second grade or so, you've kind of bucketed kids into a group of the award winners and the non-award winners. And I think that's a lot to process as a 5, 6, 7-year-old. And so I guess that's, from how this impacts small kids, our youngest students, I think that's something that we need to be thinking about. If you are consistently, and maybe the students over here who are the kids not receiving awards, they might have some other struggles that they're dealing with. So on top of that, year after year, you're seeing half of your class be told by the teacher and the school that they're outstanding and you're not. Does that contribute to anxiety and depression and other challenges that they might be trying to overcome? And I want to be really clear. I'm not saying everybody gets an award. I think that's that's, in fact, I'm actually saying more of the opposite. I think if we're going to think about, if we're going to continue to do awards as a district, we should make them really purposeful and meaningful. And I'm not sure that right now we're achieving that at a high level. I mean, I think it's all well-meaning, but not necessarily consistent with, what current best practices are.
It's interesting, because they're, again, because of what we've seen. I do remember there being a conversation here at the board table about what can we do to like acknowledge the students, maybe who have struggled in the past and now they have achieved this. And I almost saw that, the flip side of that happening, because a student was given something that said, and maybe it was the wording, like, you went the furthest on changing something. Mm-hmm. Well, so now that kid was given an award, and again, it could have been how it was presented. Like, you were here, now you're here. So the "you were here" part seemed to come out more. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It was almost like you had so far to go, so you did it, Right. So I don't know. I do listen to when the principals bring to us the requirements for these awards, mm-hmm. But it does seem like we have half the school there. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I do feel very strongly in student recognition, especially when we have something that's out of the ordinary. And we do have extraordinary students that are going above right. and beyond the call and the different things. So I hope we don't ever not do that, but I would be interested in hearing what else we could do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of, what our current best practices and can we reflect on our policies to see if there's things we could maybe tweak to be a little more in line.
I just feel like while criteria is listed at the time of the award presentation, I'm wondering if students are made aware in terms they can understand what those criteria to receive an award would be. And if it might be a motivating factor for students to work a little harder on X, Y, or Z part of their education process, whether it's social, emotional, academic, whatever it is, so that they have the opportunities to succeed and are awarded for that success appropriately. I feel like there's some awards that feel very general and very at the whim of one or two people, and I don't know that without something that's a little more data-driven or evidence-based that lets kids understand what they could achieve on the front end of the term instead of finding out at the end of the term that they didn't achieve it. So I think that we need to look at how those determinations are made for awards, or I think the administration and the teachers do. And I think that that we need to be looking at ways to create commendation for students, like you said, that are there's achievement at all levels. No matter where you are as a student, you can create something that allows for a celebration of someone's efforts.
So I have brought this up, not recently, but in the past, about what do we do to acknowledge our special needs students and their accomplishments. And it's always kind of a challenging area. And I remember sitting at one of our awards presentations, and I think it was Miller, Tim Weiler got up and said, we're going to have, it was a new award that they did, and it was for map testing. And I thought, how wonderful an opportunity that is to use that tool, because it's an individual growth thing, right? And so if a student experiences growth over a particular time frame and maybe just, off the charts, in a in a particular year, that's a great opportunity to acknowledge growth instead of just our top performers. And unfortunately, they use the MAP score to acknowledge our top performers, which is great. I mean, I'm happy for all of our students in that regard, but I think we missed an opportunity there, and it's one of those things I always wanted to say something about, and so I guess now's the time to just kind of bring that up. But just to think a little more creatively, a little differently about how we can acknowledge success and what success is to our entire student population, so that we kind of, get away from some of what you're talking about.
Right, and how do we be consistent about it and communicate to the students in a way they can understand? And again, specifically, the youngest grade levels, I think, are the most challenging. How do you communicate criteria to a kindergartner and a first grader and a second grader? It's just, they don't always think in those terms necessarily. So, I mean, I think I would like to see us revisit and see if there isn't a more thoughtful approach.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that's a great idea. I think that I'm sure every single administrator and teacher wants to recognize students, praise students, cheer our students on.
Absolutely.
We're all coming from the same spot of making sure all of our students succeed in many areas. And we do a good job of, at the junior high level, we talk about the music festival and the arts, and we hit other areas than just academics, which is wonderful, at the high school level as well. I think maybe what a good next step would be, I'm just throwing this out here, would be, I'm sure the administrators and our staff have lots of great ideas on this area. So I wonder if we could get a committee together to look at this a little bit more deeply with their input on what they think would be good next steps, and bring that to the table. Maybe a board member or two could join that committee and just continue the conversation in a more detailed way.
Yeah, and there might be some parents who are interested
Yes.
in joining that committee as well. I think that's a great idea. Kevin, what are your thoughts?
We definitely, I think, we have to hear from the administrators and from the
Yes.
staff and see what their ideas
Right.
and parents, but we definitely can put together a committee and take a look at our student recognition, our process, and develop more consistency.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think if we have something that is truly meaningful and not just awarding to award or not award, not to award.
Right.
There has to be some meaning behind it, but, it's a wonderful time of year, 2 times a year, to do that, and let's look at how we can make it meaningful. Okay. Well, you want to, why don't you wait till the public comments? Okay. Okay, then, anyone else have something on that? Okay. Presentation of ISB salary compensation report.
Each year, we're required to post administrator and teacher salary and benefits to the Illinois State Board of Ed, and then post it on our website after we've presented it at a board meeting. So this is the time of year that we do that. So the report is attached for your review.
Okay, any questions? This is, just as I'm looking at this, is this for anyone who, is this posted yet?
No, it will be posted probably on Monday.
Okay, so is this everyone in the district? No.
No, that's the next.
That's-
No,
okay.
because certain positions don't go on the ISB salary and compensation report.
Okay.
So, no,
Okay.
it's not every
And
position.
what school year is this? This is 18-19, right?
Right. Mhm. Yep,
Okay,
all right,
thank you.
all right.
Then the next item, I'm sorry, presentation of IMRF salary compensation report.
And again, we are required to post the total compensation package for employees whose compensation exceeds $75,000 per year. So that's their salary plus benefits, et cetera. So that report is also attached for our IMRF employees, and that will also be posted on the district website.
Now, that's not by person.
No, we did, no, that one isn't required to be done like
Okay.
that, so.
All right, and then presentation, okay.
Yep,
Do
and
you
then.
have something else on that?
No.
Okay, then presentation of salary report for all employees.
Okay, and then as a result of those, the board had asked for a compensation report for all employees. So we have posted all employees for the 2018-19 school year with their salary and benefits. It also includes, you know, holidays, vacation days, et cetera. So that is all employees in the district.
Okay, perfect. That's,
And that will be posted as well.
okay. Okay, perfect, thank you. Action items. All right, so I got a lot to read here, so. Adoption of 2019-2020 budget. The chair will entertain a motion. Whereas the Board of Education of Community Unit School District Number 201, County of DuPage, State of Illinois, caused to be prepared in tentative form a budget, and the secretary of this board has made the same conveniently available to public inspection for at least 30 days prior to final action thereon. And whereas a public hearing was held as to such budget on the 24th day of September 2019, notice of said hearing was given at least 30 days prior thereto, as required by law, and all other legal requirements have been complied with. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of said district as follows. Section 1, that the fiscal year of this school district be and the same hereby is fixed and declared to be beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020. Section 2, that the following budget containing an estimate of amounts available in each fund separately and of expenditures from each be and the same is hereby adopted as the budget of this school district for the next school year, for the said school year, fiscal year. I'm done reading.
So moved. Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes,
Thank you.
motion carried. Okay, superintendent's report.
Included in my report, the school district has been working with Jessica McIntyre, who's a consultant. She's been working with all of our schools and administrators. She's been assisting us with aligning our curriculum to the Common Core standards. Initially, the primary focus was math, but she's also helping us in ELA as well. And we asked her, the admin team asked her, hey, can you do an audit of where we're at now since we've been working with you and kind of our progress? And the elementary schools have adopted new curriculum. And so she did that for us, and she met with the admin team. And she's still working on the ELA piece, the language arts piece, but the math piece she shared with us. And basically, if you take a look at her report, you know, we've made tremendous progress. And when she was asked about how our district, she's working with districts across the country, throughout the state, and asked her how we compare to other districts, and she said that our district is functioning at a high level, you know, especially with our PLCs, and that we currently have no gaps in our math curriculum, K through 12, and that her recommendation is that we want to make sure that we increase the rigor of our assessments. She's been looking at our assessments, but overall, it was really a positive review of all the quality work our teachers have been doing and our administrators. And as soon as she completes the ELA, we'll share that with the board as well.
Okay. Anything else?
Yep, that's it.
Before you leave communications, can I ask, I know that there's been some downtime with the district's, you know, server and all that stuff, and Skyward and all that. Do you know if this has anything to do with the new phone system?
No.
Do we? Okay, so
No,
it's not.
It's not related to the phone system.
Okay.
No.
Can we find a way to communicate to the families? Now, obviously, we can't send an email when emails are down, but I know there was a lot of discussion, you know, on some of the Facebook pages. You know, the PTOs have great resources for the families and
Sure.
things like that. So there's a number of things that have been happening. So is there some way, you know, we have a district page.
Right.
Is there some mechanism that we can kick into gear when
Sure.
whatever's down, Skyward emails? Because the thing is, you don't know that somebody doesn't know something until
Right.
they don't know it. I know that sounds terrible. I want to know, does anybody know what I just said? So if we could utilize anything that we have to, you know, maybe something on the front page of everyone's website, unless it's a server issue and you can't get to the
Right,
website.
right,
So I'm just trying to, Facebook
Sure.
always seems to work, unless it crashes, but
Right.
I just, you know, there's been a lot of that. So if we could
Sure.
do something, I mean, I know there was old school, put something in the backpack, you know,
Right.
stuff, but
Yeah, we could always do.
we know that, maybe we know that some of the higher level kids, I'm not higher,
Right.
older
Older
students
students.
we might find that in June. But anyway,
Sure.
it would be really good if we could do something
Sure.
like that. Okay, thank you. All right, so Kevin, then you're done
Yes.
with that. Board reports. I know I wanted to say, homecoming was last Friday, and I know it's homecoming and it's a football game at the high school, but I love how our district handles the homecoming. We have our band, we have our junior high band, we have cheerleaders, we have the courts. It is such a great feeling. We have student section. I know there were a number of alum there. So just kudos to there was a wonderful parade. So it was a great thing. So even though it's a high school event, it's wonderful how we pull in the other groups. And so kudos to everybody for doing that. It was great. So any other board reports?
I just wanted to echo that. I think it's more of a community event than a high school event, and that feels really cool. But I also wanted to recognize Kim, who's been wearing, I think, 7 different hats the last few months, and to thank you for your filling in on multiple positions. And I know it's been really difficult to keep on top of everything, and yet you kept on top of everything. It's just thank you.
We're working on it.
Thank you. Okay, are there any public comments?
The awards discussion needs to belong to the climate committee. Real simple.
Okay.
You don't need to create another committee. Go to the climate committee.
Okay, Thank you. Any others? Do you need my paper? Yeah. Thank you.
I just had 2 comments. I'm grateful for the conversation.
Could you state your name?
I'm Dana Hajak. I'm a parent of Manning students. And I just wanted to say that I'm grateful that this conversation was started about the student recognition. As former PTO president and now still a member on the board, we hear that a lot from parents that comment about, you know, either too many people are getting recognized or the difference between the 2 elementary schools. Manning only has 1 award that they give out. Miller has multiple. The fact that it's a boy and a girl, why does it have to be in a boy, a girl? Couldn't it be 2 girls or 2 boys? Or why does it matter that way? There's a lot of conversation that is had on the playground at PTO meetings about this, and I'm glad that it was brought to the board's attention. And secondly, I saw when I was reading the agenda that Ms. Gilbert, who is with us at Manning and is currently subbing for Ms. Severs in 3rd grade, was up for the board to be approved to fill another maternity leave. And knowing that that maternity leave has a due date a month before the other teacher comes back, that's a little bit concerning as a parent. What are we going to do in those 4 to 6 weeks where there's that overlap? So I'm hopeful that there's communication as to how that's going to be led, because I know when people read that on an agenda, it like sends off a red flag and you're like, well, Ms. Connor is due this time and Ms. Seaver's not coming back till this time, and we don't know what's going to happen in that interim. So I think that that's a great opportunity for the board and the administrators to have very proactive communication on that end. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments?
Hello, I'm Kim Luther. Again, I find it refreshing that the awards situation was brought up, and especially in trauma-informed practices. I think would echo along with those best practices on how to deal with that. Speaking of policy, I want you to know that I did a chain of command on this. John Jonak is well aware of what I'm about to say, and he supports it, and he's given me the green light, like, yeah, you should bring that up. And that would be the sports eligibility policy. I see a lot of you taking notes. So. A lot of our surrounding districts, they'll pull the reports like we do, and then they'll offer a probation period for the students. And then once they bring that grade up, they can go ahead to play. Where ours, they're automatically out for the following week. And so especially in the beginning of the year, like we're experiencing now, teachers have such few grades in the grade book. And because of the few grades, you know, just a 3 out of 10 could be a failing grade. And it might be because their syllabus was a day late, you know, the first week of school or something like that. And so they're out for a whole week when they can just pop it into their teacher's hands on Friday and it's back up to 100%. So I think it's just good to look at the overall fairness and how can we reevaluate to motivate these students. They come to the junior high is what I'm speaking on specifically. They want to play the sports. They're excited to play the sports. And then it's like week 1, can't play the sports. So how can we motivate them to, yes, we want our students to be making the grades, right? We all can agree that grades come first. How can we give them that chance, you know, that chance to improve? My daughter specifically has had this happen 2 weeks in a row, and on both times the reports pulled on the Thursday night, I believe at midnight. By Friday at the end of the day, her grades are already back up to 100%. Yet the whole following week, she's like, can't go to practice, can't go to the game, and it's a real bummer. So I think maybe just a probation period would be something nice to consider for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other public comments? All right, then future meetings and events. The College Information Financial Night will be September 26th at 6:30 at the high school. And the next school board meeting will be October 8th, 2019 at 6 o'clock, again, here at Westmont Village Hall.
Marie, can I make a comment about our upcoming board meetings? I've heard from several parents, since we've switched our meetings to 6 o'clock, a lot of confusion about that. And I was wondering if we could send out a communication. So because we're entering closed right away, parents that want to attend our open session, I wonder if there's a way we could communicate that that would start at 7 o'clock on the website and the meeting reminders that go out and the email alerts, just because there's parents that are texting me saying, I want to come, is it at 6 or 7? I'm confused.
Okay,
So if you
that's,
could
yeah,
clarify
we
that.
can do that. We'll take, maybe we'll write something and, but yes, and then we can update our notice to the families, similar to something like that we said before, so. Okay, yes, that's a good idea. We'll do that. Okay, and then, so the next board meeting. So the chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session to discuss personnel issues, student discipline, collective bargaining, the superintendent's evaluation, and to review closed session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes?
Mrs. Coyle,
Yep.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Strohmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
And there will be a few votes after closed. Okay, we have 3 motions here. The first one, action on student discipline issue. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution to expel student 2019-01 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. Okay, the next one is board action on closed session minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to retain closed status for the closed session minutes dated February 26, 2019, March 12, 2019, March 19, 2019, April 9th, 2019, April 23rd, 2019, May 14, 2019, May 21st, 2019, June 25th, 2019, July 16, 2019, the first and second closed sessions of August 13, 2019, and the first and second closed sessions of August 27th, 2019 as presented.
So moved.
Second?
And roll call, please.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. And the last one, destruction on verbatim closed session minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the destruction of the verbatim closed session minutes from October 10th, 2017 through March 20th, 2018 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. And the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned.